There is a YouTube show presented by NFL.com, the NFL network, The Shield, featuring NFL reporters Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. It's called The Insiders. These two were discussing the possible destinations for Sean Payton this offseason. And Tom Pelissero said something that I found surprising and then found myself offended by.
It sure seems like, though, Ian, if Sean Payton is going to take a job in this cycle, everything is lining up for Denver, including the fact that their other top candidate, besides Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, is Jim Harbaugh, who, once things didn't advance quickly enough, decided, peace out, I'm going back to Michigan.
Interesting. Now, you might have been distracted by the music in the background, but I think the tense music that would only be properly used in some sort of drama or thriller movie, I think should make you feel some type of something, because you just heard Pelissero say everything is lining up for the Denver Broncos. Not going to lie, I'm offended by that notion. The Broncos are the favorites. The Broncos. The team that has Russell Wilson on it, playing like an extremely overpaid, washed player. The same Broncos team that doesn't really have that much draft capital going forward. The same Broncos team that was only 10th in DVOA defensively this past season. And defense is hard to predict year to year. They traded away their best player, Bradley Chubb, for what's probably going to end up being, since it's the San Francisco 49ers first-round pick, like a back of the first-round pick. I'm kind of offended by the idea that the Broncos are the frontrunner. What does Sean Payton see in Denver that he doesn't see in Houston? What is it that he sees? What's going on here? So is it just Denver for Sean Payton this offseason? Ian Rappaport followed up on Tom Pelissero's everything is lining up for Denver comment and had this to say about Payton's future. He makes it seem like Payton might not even take a job this offseason.
I wonder this, though, like, what does Sean Payton want? You know, I've talked to plenty of people close to him, and I know you have. Some say he's definitely coaching. Some say, he might return. He might go back to TV. What does Sean Payton want is something we're going to find out over the course of the next couple of days.
The Insiders.
The hunt for Red October.
Really, with the music in the background, Sean. And I know you just watched that movie recently for the first time, right?
Yeah, and they stole the music from that movie.
Right, and on top of that, did Ian Rappaport even say anything there? People are wondering what Sean Payton will do.
We've talked to a lot of people close to Sean Payton. None of them know anything. All dummies.
So now I'll ask, as an insider, what does Sean Payton want? These information traders across the NFL reporters, the ones at the top of the food chain, Adam Schefter, you have Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero's trending up in that direction. When they don't actually have something, I do find it amusing to listen to them. But, okay, maybe Sean Payton doesn't take a job this offseason. Well, that would actually go against what you heard from Payton when you were listening to his interview with Colin Cowherd earlier this week. Did you not notice that Payton said, hey, the compensation for me might be a little bit less, say I sit out this year. That, to me, is somebody who's putting a little bit of pressure on Mickey Loomis, GM of the Saints, to make sure that they make a trade of Sean Payton to some other team. So I'm curious as to where he ends up. I don't think that the Texans are likely, but I do think it is good that the Texans completed an interview with him and that Payton complimented them publicly. That's all we got. That is where we are here when it comes to football in Houston. But there's something interesting that happened yesterday, and I imagine it has Jeremy Branham of the Killer Bees disappointed. Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, said that he's staying in Detroit. Why? Because he thinks Detroit is building something special, and he wants to see it through a couple of ways to interpret this. Ben Johnson has only interviewed with one team. It was the Houston Texans about a week ago. Is this a case of, it's not me, it's you? Is this I got to go work on myself. I went on a date. I'm not ready to go out into the dating pool. Or could it be this? And this is a bit of a conspiracy theory. So put your tinfoil hat on. Put it on tight. Hold on to it. Benjamin Albright is a reporter based out of Denver. And he tweeted out something that I found very interesting. Ben Johnson's current boss is former Sean Payton assistant Dan Campbell. If anyone would know about Payton's future, ... it would be Campbell. So Johnson only interviewed with the Texans and didn't interview with anybody else. Is that because he knows that one of those other teams, the Panthers, who he canceled the interview with, is going to hire Payton? Is it because Payton and the Texans had an amazing date on Monday? I hope it's the latter. I don't know that it is. I, in fact, doubt that it is. But I think that's something worthy of thinking about. Why did Ben Johnson decide, I'm out. I'm not going to take a job this offseason. We're building something in Detroit. Cool. You might not ever have an opportunity to be a head coach again, Ben. And now I think he knows that. Going into next year, Jared Goff's going to be their starting quarterback. Is that offense going to be able to replicate what it did last year with, again, Jared Goff? And there's actually expectations on the Lions going from this year into next year. So if the Lions suck, Ben Johnson might have to wait a while. And we're talking about generational money when you become a head coach. So either Ben Johnson knows that Sean Payton is going to Carolina, which is why he canceled the interview that he had with Carolina, or Ben Johnson only wanted the Texans job, and Sean Payton and the Texans had a great meeting. The latter does sound crazy the more that I say it aloud. But hey, if you speak something into existence, sometimes it'll actually happen. I also read that on Facebook from a meme featuring a minion. Sean Mapes is behind the glass. I am Paul Gallant. This is the most interactive sports talk show in Houston. 713-780-3776 is how you call in. It's also how you text in on the HRNP listener line. You can tweet me at Gallant Says, at Shawnee Mapes Behind the Glass, or join us in our Twitch comments section, twitch.tv/ESPN975. Coming up next, one of the NFL's best players is thinking about the Houston Texans in 2023. He is thinking about them. I said in the last segment that one of the NFL's best players ever, was thinking about the Houston Texans. Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show. Here is number 12, but not the good number 12, like the overrated number 12, the not Tom Brady number 12.
If there's a rebuild going on, I won't be a part of that.
So they have to figure that out. And do they have to figure that out before you decide that you're coming back? Because then there is kind of a timeline, right? Isn't there?
Well, listen. I don't think any team outside of maybe the Texans this year or some. There's a couple of teams maybe who might say, yeah, we're rebuilding. We finished down at the bottom of the league, and we're obviously we're going to start over. These teams who have new GM or head coach and they're drafting pretty high, they might admit that they're in some sort of rebuild, but not. Most teams in the middle of the pack aren't going to say, hey, we're going to rebuild.
So Aaron Rodgers confirmed not going to be joining the Houston Texans this offseason, but he was thinking about them. What teams are currently going through a rebuild? The Texans are. Hey, he thought about them. Does that mean he thinks the rebuild is going well? I don't know. I can't say. All I know is that in life, you sometimes have to embrace who you are. I worked at the Texans flagship for nearly a decade, and I do realize that when it comes to sports in town, even with the Astros being as awesome as they are, even with me wearing an Astros jersey today, sometimes I just can't help myself. I just constantly think about the Houston Texans. And you know what? I don't think things are as bad as they're made out to be. And I feel like kicking the Texans right now, it's kicking down. But some have argued that this means I'm full of it. Some think that I am delivering lies. I'm just a shill. So I've decided to embrace my role. And I am announcing that going forward, I have a new title.
Some say he gaslights.
Who are you? Minister of Propaganda?
Others say he spreads disinformation.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
But he's just telling you what you need to hear.
Yes, I created a lie. But because you believed it, you found something true about yourself.
Paul Gallant is the Texans Minister of Truth.
You lied.
I exaggerated.
Yes, everybody, I am officially the Texans Minister of Truth. I will tell you the truths that you just won't hear. Our first subject today is technically one of my teammates, Jake Asman, the Asman of the Wheelhouse, which you can hear on this radio program 3 to 7. He sent out a tweet yesterday, and I did agree with parts of it. Nick Caserio's first two coaching hires were David Culley and Lovie Smith. I agree with that part of his tweet. The rest of the tweet.
To be fair, that is just a fact.
But I agree with the fact.
Okay.
Okay? I don't have to, Sean, spin this fact as the Texans Minister of Truth. His first two drafts have been underwhelming. Has it been underwhelming? Is it fair to grade the first draft given that they didn't have a first or a second round pick? Davis Mills has been underwhelming largely in great doses. I agree with another part of his tweet here, though. I'll take a Hall of Fame offensive-minded coach to help develop my franchise quarterback. Yes, I agree. Because I wouldn't trust Nick Caserio, continued Jake, to hire the right guy. No! Come on! Listen, could they have hired anybody other than David Culley going into a season where you're like, is Deshaun Watson just going to be hanging out here all year? Culley, I feel like, was the only person willing to take the job. This past offseason, they almost hired Josh McCown. Seems like they phased out Jack Easterby at exactly the right time, and they decided, you know what, we got to do something. Let's hire Lovie Smith, keep some continuity going forward. I know that it's perhaps over the top to give Nick Caserio a pass for both of the hirings, but I do think there should be some sense of, could those coaches have really done anything with the rosters that they were given? And what could Caserio have done to fix those rosters over a 2-year stretch? That's all I'm asking. That's it. But this is where Jake Asman went too far. And the Minister of Truth, me, Paul Gallant, had to step in. He tweets out the draft class that we saw for the Houston Texans last year. Stingley at 3. Sauce Gardner, historically better at number 4. Well, that's actually true. Kind of true. Look, got to give it more time. Can't make a grade on a draft pick after one season. However, Jake is right. Sauce looks like he was the correct pick. However, we could go all day with decisions a GM should have made during a draft instead of the ones that they actually did. I think very often online, we make it as if the draft is really easy. It's not. It's very hard. It's very complicated. And I'm not going to kill Nick Caserio 1 year after Stingley versus Sauce Gardner was decidedly won 10-7 or so by Gardner. The Stingley injury thing is a concern. To go a little bit further down, Kenyon Green at 15. Johnson, Linderbaum, offensive lineman, better at 17 and 25. Fair to an extent. I do think with Kenyon Green, you have to factor in this offseason how little reps he got in training camp. If you were out there, you barely saw him. Then all of a sudden he was getting game action the first couple of games, showed some positive signs, but it did not last, and he regressed as the season went along. I'm not going to write off green for this season, but I would agree with Jake, not a great start. But this, guys, this is where things get not just bad, but problematic to the point where your Houston Texans Minister of Truth may have to acquire secret police services to put a bag over Jake's head and cancel him from the internet forever. John Mechie at 44, George Pickens better at number 49. Hang on a second. Mechie has the cancer. You can't say that. Yes, George Pickens was better than somebody with a torn ACL and cancer. We're talking about pretty low 4. And great for John Mechie. He's better. Sounds like we're going to see him next year. I don't think you can judge that pick just yet. And in fairness to Jake, I don't think Jake was saying, Nick Caserio, what an idiot. Drafted a guy who had cancer? Oh.
How'd he pass his medicals?
You know what, Sean? I've got a spin zone as the Texans Minister of Truth.
Oh, God.
Nick Caserio knew cancer stops here in Houston.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, this is the cancer beating capital of the United States of America. So, I'm kidding though. Again, I want to make that very clear.
But
This side of things, I am messing around.
If I was Jake, I would have just skipped the John Mechie part.
Well, there's another part that sadly Jake skipped as well, because he says at the very end, Christian Harris and Jalen Petrie are the only picks you can say. Yep, right pick. Jake, you forgot Dameon Pierce. And I know that some people would argue, never draft a running back, ever. Don't do it. And maybe the Texans did draft the running back too early based off of some of those nerd analytical types online. They drafted Dameon Pierce in the 4th round. You should never draft him. You could have drafted him in the 5th or the 6th. There are some people who do that, but you got to include Dameon Pierce. So I hope that you guys appreciate me, Paul Gallant, the Texans Minister of Truth. I will smote all lies. I will establish order. And I will tell you what you need to know to sleep at night, because that's what you want. Do you want the real truth? Do you really want to know how the sausage is made, or do you want to be told what you want to hear? That is my gift to you.